Hello and welcome to the Pilot Podcasts, where we talk with people who have taken unique paths and have some inspiring stories to tell us. Today I'm sitting with Ulla Grøn, our recent new principal at the KAOSPILOT, and you have now been with us for almost 100 days.
That's true.
How does it feel?
It feels very good. It's been amazing 3 months, and I feel it started a little bit earlier than that. So when I was welcomed for the first time, that was actually already in February. But of course, starting the position as such, that was March 1st. So close to 100 days, yes.
Yeah. And it goes by quickly.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you and welcome you. I think everyone at the school has been very excited to have you on board. But this is not your first time being a principal, I've heard.
That's true.
Yeah. When was the last time?
It must be, I'm not good at mathematics, 20 years ago?
Yes.
Perhaps a long time ago.
At which school?
15 years ago.
15 years ago.
Yes, so I was the principal of a folk high school. And that's a very Danish concept, so might not be known to everyone across the globe. But it is a boarding school where young people come, typically they are like 20-something, to study a material that is important to them and or to finding out if this is a matter I would like to study later on at university or so on. So better test it out before actually choosing the education.
Sounds very exciting.
It was.
Yeah. How long were you a principal there?
6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where was it?
It's 35 kilometers away from Aarhus. Today it's called Kalø High School. So it's close to a small city called Bryndís.
And I've also heard that you grew up on a high school.
That's true.
Yeah. Can you tell me something about that? How was that?
That was Vestbirk High School. And that's like, 50 kilometers away from Aarhus. I'm a really local girl.
Okay.
In these surroundings. But it was great. I lived there since I was 2 years old. My dad was the principal and my mother was a teacher. And it was a very, very vibrant community. And I lived there until I moved away for school and for work and so on. So throughout the 70s and 80s, I lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine also it has left a mark on one, if you have grown up with this school surrounding and being a part of this big community that a high school also is.
Yeah.
A folk high school.
Yeah.
Has it been something you have sought after then in your adult life? These kind of school communities or communities in general?
No. Strangely enough, so I've never been to a high school myself, only for one summer course, but that was like a vacational thing that our parents invited us. I was like 7 years old. So no, at the age, after finishing high school, I think today a lot of people go to high school, but what I did was different. I simply just needed to get out of my house. So I had a position as an au pair.
Okay.
So I was 16, I think, 15, 16. So I went to a family that we knew, a very good family, very close relation and so on. And then I worked with them for a year.
In Denmark?
In Denmark, but outside my parents' home. And then from that, I thought, the world is big. Why not go somewhere else and learn a new language? Yeah. So I did that and took a year of youth exchange in Colombia, in South America. So no, strangely enough, I didn't look for the community. I looked for independency, not living at home. And then I looked for, I thought I really want to learn a language. I can always go to Spain, so I'll aim for South America. Yeah. When I have this possibility of getting support and in a safe environment and all of that.
I want to ask a little bit into your previous job. Before you applied to be a principal for KAOSPILOT, you had been working for Grundfos, which is quite a big company.
Yeah.
to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And the most recent position you had there was working with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Am I right?
True.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really curious into your journey there, and I've heard you had different positions within the company. And how was your journey towards diversity, equity, and inclusion? How did you end up there?
For many reasons, but I started with Grundfos. I was there 11 years, as you said.
Yeah.
And I started at my first position. I had a year or two, but then I stepped into the area of leadership and culture. So working with what is good leadership, how does Grundfos develop leaders, how does Grundfos develop people, and then culture as well, because it doesn't happen in itself. Leadership, it's a culture also. And then I think we're back in 2017. The top leadership gave me a task that was called, Ulla, please go and work with gender diversity in leadership. So back then we had 20% of our leaders were women and 80% were men. And that's not good enough, right? So if you look across the world, there's a 50-50, and there are also many more gender identities than just man and woman. But anyhow, that was the task. And
it's a big task.
It's a big task, and I had it, of course, because I was heading leadership as such. So this was just a task.
Yeah.
So go do. They could have asked me to do other things, but of course their intention was actually very good with this. We do not resemble society. What can we do? We have a lot of engineers and so on. So I was asked to take the task, and then I said, no, thank you.
Okay.
I don't want that task. Please ask someone else. And of course, my boss, she asked, but why do you say that? And I said, because I don't believe it's needed. I think the women are well educated. We can fight for ourselves. We don't need extra, a lot of that stuff. So I really had a resistance. And she listened to me. And then she said, okay, but I'm not asking you. It's an order. Go do.
Okay.
So that was kind of
the turn of events.
The turn of events.
Yeah.
And I needed to, and of course it's part of my responsibility being global, responsible for leadership. But so I went and said, okay, how do I bite this elephant? Where do I start? And remember, it's before the Me Too.
Guess it's around that time.
Or perhaps around that time.
Yeah.
So I simply just needed to take it as a task. So I started reading about it, interviewing people. I made some focus group sessions with both male and female leaders and la-di-da. Went to conferences. And I still remember how I learned and changed my perspective. And saw how needed it was. So that was the personal start for me, coming from a place of resistance.
Yeah.
To saying, oh my God, this is really needed. And then work with it very professionally. And I almost always state this story because to me that's part of understanding what inclusion is also about. It's about giving the possibility for people to change and develop. So I was there, then I went here, and then eventually I probably went somewhere around here on that agenda. But that's how it started.
So maybe it started with a personal experience of you went through the journey that we as a society have to go through. Or like everyone has to go through this if we're going to...
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, going to continue in the fight for equality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think it's... I actually still take it very seriously that all this stuff about unconscious bias and so on, it is unconscious.
Yeah.
right? If not, then it's something else. So I actually still keep a list on my phone. So whenever I catch myself in, okay, I actually write it down. So
when you catch your unconscious bias.
Yes.
Okay. That's a really like a small little technical tool to help track the unconscious things that happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I still do that now.
Okay.
How many years? 5 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it hard to onboard others after you had experienced the the journey from resistance and towards actually seeing that we need some work?
No, I don't think so, because that's the beauty of interventions.
Yeah,
you do it with people, and they become impacted. So, for instance, those focus group sessions that I invited for, there was a lot of people who then also carried a seed with them on this journey and so on. So, and there was also the attention from top leadership on it. So no, I don't think it was hard. It was fun, interesting, very much needed, and a lot of learnings. But what then really beefed it up, so to say, was that we had there was a new CHRO, so Chief Human Resource Officer, so a person in the top leadership.
Yeah.
When she joined, she said, why don't we make this beyond the gender diversity in leadership? What do you say? Should we build a fully fledged D&I strategy ambition? So that was when it really took off.
Yeah, that's high ambitions.
It was high ambitions.
Yeah.
So solid work, solid research internally, engaging, building what's called employee resource groups. So it's not just top down, but it was actually building movements within the organization and empower them to run with the agenda. Yeah. So much fun.
Sounds very fun.
It was.
But what's so important about diversity? I think that's a question that a lot of people ask.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we need to do this work? The world is running fine as it is, some would even say. Why do we need diversity?
Yeah. So diversity is in itself, it's actually just representation. So nobody is diverse in themselves. You need a group of people before you can talk about diversity traits. So that's representation. Inclusion is then about making sure there's this psychological safety. So people with the diverse perspectives and backgrounds and so on can actually step forward, feeling safe to step forward, and that we understand how to work together. And then the belonging part is also a matter of actually committing to whatever it is. I heard a beautiful expression at the school a couple of days, I think 2 days ago, where one of the students, she explained what it feels like when you feel you belong. And I think she said something like, it's like when people are not looking for the hole in the cheese. Do you remember? I think you were there.
I'm not sure, but it sounds beautiful.
Beautiful expression. So it's 3 different things. And we need it, if you ask me, and you do, we need it because the challenges we have today are so complex. I don't know which one you want to name, but...
Yeah, there's abundance of challenges.
There's abundance of challenge, and I don't know which one we should choose, but whatever. So let's say this is the challenge we put in the center. And we can have this many super clever, dedicated people who really want to change this one, and there's nothing wrong with their skills, ambition level, whatever, but they will also just take this into consideration.
Yeah, only that tunnel line.
Only that. So if you have a diversity of different backgrounds and perspectives and so on, the solution will simply be better. And it will take into account, a much wider spectrum of who is affected by this. So for that reason, I think it's really, really important. Yeah. And the second reason is, not many reasons, but reflecting society.
Yeah.
I think that's also important. And you cannot do that in every single corner, every single group. You cannot be an exact copy of society. You should not.
Yeah.
But at some level, for instance, like coming back to the request, leadership positions in Grundfos, 20-80 distribution based on gender, that's not good enough. So at that level, it should be much closer to 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah, when talking about gender equality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something about solving or tackling the world's challenges today and how we're going to do it. And that's what you were touching on before, that we are much more likely to be able to solve some of them together with a wide array of people and backgrounds and perspectives. That makes me really excited for the future. Because I can see that diversity, equity, and inclusion is becoming a bigger theme, a bigger topic. At least in my scope of vision from this corner of the world. Yeah, and it makes me really excited to think of what we will be able to do in the future when we consider these elements.
Me too.
Into our work. Yeah. And then I want to ask you a little bit into KAOSPILOT and how you ended up here in this podcast today. I was told that you have been a censor at the school for some exams, most likely third-year exams. Am I right?
Yeah. Projects. Yeah.
When was that?
That was, I think, the last one must have been the team that graduated in 2012 or 2013. So more than 10 years ago. And I was the public censor, as it was called back then, for a period of 4 to 5 years.
How did that happen? Why were you a censor at the exam?
So that's, now I think we address one of the things that makes KAOSPILOT,
what it is or something.
Yeah, and what it can do. So via network, somebody reached out to me and said, so the first year I was not a public censor, but a subject matter censor.
Okay.
And they said, we're looking for somebody who, because we have a project from a student from Colombia who wants to start a Danish folk high school. Oh. So we're looking for a person who knows about the Danish folk high school and has lived in Colombia. And I'm just like, how did they find me then?
Incredible.
So that was the start of it.
And then you were brought into the exam.
Just for this examination.
Yeah.
And I found it very, very interesting. And then for the following years, then I was invited in on more examinations.
So you had a little bit of a relationship to the school since then.
Yeah.
And then we needed a new principal. I'm curious on where did you see that we were looking, or did somebody point it out to you and say, hey, Ulla, shouldn't you apply for this? How was your application journey, I guess?
What is crazy is I think it's only half a year ago. More or less. So how things can change in 6 months. I was called, I was poked by the recruitment agency based on my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And what they said was it was partly the DE&I stuff, but also of course, having been connected with KAOSPILOT, the Folk High School, all of that. So for that reason, I think it was just a plain search, and my name came up, and they asked if I wanted to know more.
Which you said yes to.
Then I said yes. You should always say yes, would be a recommendation. So if people call and ask, do you want to know more, it doesn't cost anything to say yes.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
And then you heard more, and were invited for an interview, I guess.
Yes. Couple of interviews, yes.
Yeah, which ended in your hiring.
Yes.
Which has led us to today.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what are some things that have surprised you in your first 100 days at KAOSPILOT? It's a big question. You can take a little time to think about it.
Yeah, and that's where people say, remember to write it down, because as soon as you fall into the daily routines, you will forget. But I do remember from the very first days that I was thinking, wow, they ask a lot of questions. That was like,
Yeah.
okay. We had a session on the very first day with staff, and they made some kind of, we could just ask questions, and it was all sort of questions that where I feel like a person who never reflects on anything, because it was like, how do you prepare, how do you show up if it's an important thing, or how do you get ready for it? It was all, what's your favorite book? Are you religious? All sorts of questions that I'm not sure that I'm used to, speaking about at the very first meeting, but that was how it is. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a surprise, but it was at least something I registered.
Mm. Did the questions get fewer with time, or is it still something
Just
maybe you're
becoming used to it?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that I noticed.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I would define it as surprises, but I would say I have learned a lot.
Yeah.
So I said for the first period of time, so more or less the first 100 days, that my priorities would be first of all the people. So getting to know people, and that's students, that's staff, that's the association, that's the people around. That would be my first priority, and then really understand from that what is going on. And then, of course, I also needed to I had my first board meeting 2 weeks after I started, so there was also a lot of learning to take in, from
steep learning curve
from like the bylaws to the vision, so to speak. So where to start? So I simply just chose to start with people, and I'm happy for that decision, and that also enabled me to. I was invited in to follow a lot of very, very important stuff, such as the assessment workshop.
Yeah.
Right from reading applications and all the way through.
For the applications from the students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Team 31.
Yeah.
And also understanding, different models that are actually at play, such as also building the assessment workshop decision-making part on sociocracy.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful experience. So from engaging with different key elements, and of course a lot of stuff happens in now, from March to where we are today in June.
Yeah.
So also the examinations and a lot of very, very interesting yearly cycle stuff. I simply chose just to dedicate time and get into that and understand from being there and talking with people what it is about.
I think that's a very beautiful way of entering a space. And I think it wasn't until today when you mentioned it and you named that this is actually what you have been doing intentionally. You have decided that these 100 days were to observe and to learn and get introduced to this space you're entering. And I think it's just something I really admire, that way of entering a space. Because I think it can also feel overwhelming often for organizations to have new leaders, and change can also often feel scary. Can bring some losses also.
True.
Yeah. So it was something I noted today. I was like, that's a very beautiful way of doing it.
Yeah. And it's and of course it's this about the education, but it's also all the other stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So engaging on the KP youth.
Yeah.
And understanding what is that. I find it so interesting. All the stuff that's going on with the learning agency.
Yeah.
So having now the Brazilians, 2 groups of Brazilians for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
But also looking at people when they come out from Simon's learning arches training, like,
Whoa.
yeah.
You can see that they've learned something new.
I can see they learned something new.
Yeah.
And there's so many factors. Meeting a lot of alumni have reached out, and are here and hang around and sit at the table in the kitchen, and we have a short talk. Perhaps we don't go deep, but we get a little. So actually, when I started, and it was March 1st, and I thought, what's it going to be like? Because there's then the ELP. There's the placement and people on pilot projects, and thought, oh my God, there's not going to be anyone around. But there has been. There's actually been quite a lot of people in and out, and so I actually think it was. I will recommend for the next one to start March 1st, because I think it was perfect timing with regards to the student cycle.
Yeah,
and also a lot of stuff. That happens very naturally over spring. So new projects getting started and so on. So it's been, I learned a lot.
A good point in time to start.
At a good point in time, yeah.
And what's next? What's happening the next 100 days? We're going into summer. I hope you're going on vacation like the rest.
I do.
Yeah.
So I think I will say the next 100 days start after the vacation, because if not, then it's so-ish. So the next period of time is, for one, that's if we stay with the people theme, I'm ready for next level. So external partners, but also going, be more. I've really been here, present physically, every day.
Yeah.
But I think I will go and extend my people circles a bit.
Yeah.
And then the 2 extremes I mentioned, so the foundational work and the vision, both of them we will continue with.
Yeah.
So the very foundational work is needed. So like I shared today with you in the session, what does the new board look like, or what do we expect it will look like?
Yeah.
All of that basic stuff is still something I need to get even more under my skin, but it's important. There needs to be a solid foundation for what we do. To some it might be boring. I don't think it is, because it's like the foundation we stand on.
Because you're entering the school and the organization in a time of many changes, and there's been a lot of developments and a lot of things evolving these past years, and will continue to do so. So it's a very, I guess, a fruitful time, but an interesting time also to enter.
It is.
And hence also this foundational work and vision work.
Yeah, and then the vision work. And I've been saying this since actually the first dialogue that you asked to. So for the vision part, I have a stand. What I think is relevant to discuss, and then we have just last week or a week before we actually just started a strategy process.
Okay.
So we started with staff and doing our first. Design thing, and you will be included, of course, and you will be a key part of it. So we are looking into collecting data and planning for how to run a big seminar end of September.
It's very exciting.
It is.
A big seminar.
Yes,
here
on
in
purpose
Aarhus?
here at the school.
Yeah.
Purpose and principles. So I think via that process, we will unfold a lot of possible futures together. And then that is input to the visionary work as well.
Okay.
So just a sneak peek into the future, but
Yeah.
so we'll do as much as we can this side of the summer break, but there's also a limit to how much can be done while also having all these graduations and finalization of projects and a lot of closing down is actually happening. So now something is going to happen, but I think it will perhaps not be until after the break that you'll hear more about it.
We'll look forward to it.
Me too.
I think we're gonna end here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting.
I look forward to following through the next many 100 days, hopefully.
Yes, me too.
So that was it for this episode of the Pilot Podcast. We've talked with Ulla, our new principal at the KAOSPILOT school, who has now been with us for 100 days. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories on the podcasts.